there, this is Danielle Dunlop for Possum Stamps. It's probably a little odd the start of my video this time, but I was just playing around with some distress inks and I didn't really have a plan yet for the card I was going to make. And then I decided, well, maybe I'll just take you along with me while I'm just playing and messing around. And that's sometimes what I like to do without an actual plan. I'm just messing around. And then also, when I have all this stuff out, I like to make multiple cards. And that's also what I ended up doing for this video. I made this two cards with the new Beautiful Wings stamp set that's from the May release. And I started here on my glass mat. I have this medium mat from Tim Holtz. There's also a bigger one out now. The one I'm playing on is the one that you usually put like on the side, on that white part. And I'm just applying some squeezed lemonade and abandoned coral to the medium mat. And I spritz water on it. And then I drag my cardstock through it. And between every layer I apply, I make sure I dry it really, really well. And then if you apply the next layer, you get some really nice texture in there. You actually build up some layers if you dry them in between. So that's what I'm doing here right now. Mostly when I do this technique, I use Distress Heavy cardstock. And I thought I grabbed that, but it actually was the Distress Watercolor cardstock. It doesn't matter. This technique where you use a lot of water, it works really well on both, actually. And maybe it actually works better on the watercolor one because it's made to hold a lot of water. But the heavy stock is a really good one for this technique as well. So on this one, I'm working, like I said, with the squeezed lemonade and abandoned coral. And I also used a brush to add some splatters extra to it, like you can see me doing here. And that's just an extra layer that you're building up. And once I was done with these two colors, I moved on to Selfish Patina and Shaded Lilac for another background. I usually like to start with the lightest color. So in this case, I started with the Selfish Patina. And with the previous background, I started with the Squeezed Lemonade. And then when you add the darker color to it, it's not too dark and bright right away. And it especially makes it better if you afterwards go back in with another layer of the lighter color. So here I'm going to add the Shaded Lilac, which is clearly darker than the Selfish Patina. So you definitely see like a huge contrast. But then when you go back in with the Selfish Patina, it tones it down a little bit again. And then once I'm happy with the colors I have, I'm going back in and add some splatters with my brush. And what I like about making multiple cards is once I have all these inks out and I'm making a mess anyway, I just like to create multiple cards with the same techniques. And these are just amazing backgrounds, and it goes with a lot of different stamp sets and different themes. So here you can see that stamp set, the Beautiful Wings, which came out in May. And I'm going to heat emboss them on vellum. It's a technique that I really like to do, but somehow I always seem to forget about using vellum. I don't know why. In my opinion, it heat embosses better and easier than on cardstock. I find it easier to get a crisp image. And also when you're going to fussy cut the images, it goes a lot smoother with vellum. I'm not the best fussy cutter, as you probably know by now. And it just goes easier with vellum than it does with cardstock. I like to ink up my images a couple times, so I make a couple prints just to make sure that there's enough ink on my vellum. And for this butterfly, I used gold embossing powder. The only thing you need to keep in mind that you do not set your heat tool on the highest setting. Vellum overheats more easily than cardstock, but it also means it takes a little longer before your image is embossed. But just a little patience and your result will be beautiful. Now for the next image, I'm going to use white heat embossing because I want to make my card slightly different. And I also looked at what it would look like on the different backgrounds. So the background with the salvage patina and shaded lilac, the gold embossing looked better on it. It was better to see the image. And on the abandoned coral and squeezed lemonade background, the white embossing powder was more visible. So that's why I did two different ones. And with the embossing, I'm the same way as in once I have all my stuff out for it, I'm going to heat emboss everything. So I also decided to do my sentiments with heat embossing. So I'm stamping my sentiments on some black cardstock. And for the one card where I used white heat embossing powder for the butterfly, my sentiment is going to be white as well. And then for the gold butterfly, my sentiment is going to be gold heat embossed as well. And with these sentiments, you can clearly see how much easier the powder cures on cardstock compared to vellum, just because you can use a higher heat setting. Now I'm going to fussy cut my butterflies. There are dies available for this stamp set. I just don't have them. But like I said, with vellum, it's like your scissors are like sliding through butter. It's so much easier to make a nice fussy cut than it is with cardstock. Then I'm going to use my tonic guillotine trimmer to cut some perfect strips for my sentiment. I like my paper trimmer usually, but if I want these like super straight, even rectangles for sentiment strips, this is my go-to tool all the time. You just can't go wrong. Now, vellum is always a bit tricky to adhere to your cards. What I'm doing here is I put some Nuvo glue on my glass mat, and I'm using the metal tip from my pickup tool and just apply very little drops of glue right there where the embossing lines are or your stamping lines. And I want the wings to come off of the background anyway, so I'm only putting the glue on the body of the butterfly. And with these little drops of glue, it's just enough to keep it in place, but you will not see anything of it. My sentiment strips are going on some foam strips, just for some dimension on my card. So I like these foam strips. You don't have to cut too much actually to make it fit. So I always have those on hand besides my foam squares. And I just simply put them right there underneath the butterflies on my card. And then for a last final touch, I'm going to add some of the sequins from Possum Stems. And for my salvage patina with shaded lilac background card, I'm using the Spring Showers mix. They have some teal colors. I didn't want this sequence to stand out too much. I just wanted to be a fun detail to just add some interest to my cards. And then for this other card, I'm using the Hello Sunshine mix. Now this whole card front is on double-sided tape, and that's how I add it to my card bases. And this is such a fun way to pretty quickly create two cards that are somewhat the same, but also a little different. And I love how that shine from the embossing powder stands out from those inky backgrounds. I hope you enjoyed watching these cards come together. If you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye bye.